So I'm going to sync this video, and then we're going to do a really quick recording before my first meeting. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hopefully that's sufficient. We will find out. So I hinted at this in the logistics video that I was going to do an icebreaker, or at least give you the spiel that I do and kind of the key kind of important aspect of the icebreaker. And I apologize when you hear jingling. That is, you can take a wild guess. That is the knuckleheads getting into mischief, because that is what they do. But only when I'm recording. Anyway, okay, so here's my cutesy little icebreaker. Archie, can I help you? Apparently I cannot, but my shoe is interesting. So, here's my knowledge is power spiel. So, stereotypes exist about how good certain people are about science, math, or just school in general, or how some people are naturally smart. Now, these stereotypes form at a really early age, and I mean, there's still research to be done on this, on exactly when they form and why, but the link between men and math, for example, happens by 2nd grade in the United States at the very least. So, I've already put that on the slide. So these happen at an early age. There's this idea that girls are somehow worse at math than boys. And actually, next slide, please. Boys and girls perform the same on math achievement tests. This distribution here is of effect sizes, and we'll learn about those later, but what they show is the difference between boys and girls, and an effect size is a standardized metric. Now here, these are really tiny effect sizes. Most of them, so this is the biggest one on this diagram, is 0.1. That's the equivalent of 10% of a standard deviation. To put that in some context, that's the equivalent of 1.5 IQ points difference. It's marginal. That's really tiny, and that's the biggest one, because like a 1 point difference on an IQ test is well within measurement error. It's totally reasonable to like take it again and change easily within 1 point or 2 and not having reflected any actual ability. So the weighted mean across all of these effect sizes is 0.0065. That is less. That's 0.006 of a percent. Or 6. It's really tiny. And there are lots of other stereotypes in this range, and pretty much all of them show the same kind of thing, that there's actually no difference. Or if there is, it's so minor and tiny that it's substantively, it's not a meaningful difference. It may be a statistical difference, but not a meaningful difference. So, unfortunately though, these stereotypes about math performance and science performance can undermine how well you do on a test, by increasing your test anxiety, by discouraging you from seeking out math activities, and just giving up sooner. Now, why am I telling you about this? Because, well, one of the best ways to protect yourself against this stereotype threat is to be aware of it. So, boom, I have inoculated you all. So, this applies both to thinking like for a group to be perceived as worse, but as well as groups being perceived as better. So among Asian Americans, there's an equally strong stereotype that Asians are better at math, while in fact they're about the same, but it can still have that stressful test anxiety, and so as a consequence they perform worse than they would otherwise, just because of those extra little kind of cognitive resources being spent on, oh, am I bad at this? Oh, I better perform way better because everybody else does better and everybody thinks I'm going to do well. And so spending all those stressful cognitive resources takes away from your ability to do well. And this intervention just telling you that these threats exist, and if you're aware of them, it inoculates you to a lot of the threat, which is kind of cool. And now, typically what I do here is I have a cutesy activity where I pass out note cards and ask you to write about your specific concerns for this class. And I realize that this isn't a stats class, so why am I talking to you about stereotype threat in math? It's because in psychology, you will get more and more into the statistics in math. And I'm just telling you now, y'all are all very smart people. You are at Wake Forest. You are smart and capable of doing any of the statistics that you're going to encounter in your academic career. So, before I talk about the knowledge is power activity that we won't be doing, I want to share an anecdote. So, as a quantitative psychologist, there's this accurate perception that I'm pretty good at math, at least relative to other psychologists. And yet, and my standardized tests kind of throughout middle and high school and college, for the most part, reflected that. I did really well in math and also really well in verbal. But the kind of bizarre thing, and I still don't understand how this happened, is I was convinced that college math was going to be way harder than undergrad math or than high school math. And so I actively avoided taking math classes my first year of college because, quote, I thought it was going to be hard. It wasn't. And I had all this huge evidence that I shouldn't be afraid of this content. And yet I still was. And part of it boiled down to, oh, I'm a girl, therefore math is going to be way harder for me, even though objectively, it wasn't. Objectively, I did really well on all my math classes, and people were always surprised if I, did better on my verbal, on any standardized test, than math, just because that wasn't what they expected. But, yeah, so I actively avoided it, even though I had all this evidence to the contrary. And now I'm a quantitative psychologist who's considered one of the mathy people in my department. Sometimes I still doubt that, but I know that that's more of a stereotype issue than an actual competency issue. So, that's my fun anecdote. Now, if we were in class, I would have us do a knowledge is power activity. This helps me get to know you, in addition to asking you to make name tags, which I then will hand out in a very humiliating fashion for me when it becomes clear that I'm awful at learning names, which I am. So having to hand back the name tags adds this social pressure, so it forces me to learn them, and I get pretty good pretty fast. But there's always one or two names that I perpetually mix up. So there's that fun social pressure. But anyway, before I get too far ahead or aside, because it's an aside really, not an ahead of myself, I would have asked you to write about your specific concerns for the class, what your favorite class was in high school, and what your dream job is now, and what it was when you were in kindergarten. So then we would introduce ourselves, share about our favorite class, and our current dream job, as well as kindergarten. I've had some really great kindergarten icebreakers. I wanted to be, mine's not so great, mine's very boring. Unless it's yours too, and then it's fantastic. I wanted to be a princess fireman. Because reasons. Sometimes I also wanted to be a cat. Kindergarten was a weird time for me. But my favorite response ever was one of she was actually on the wait list, and so because of this I let her in. She wanted to be a grilled cheese sandwich. I never would have expected someone to want to be a food. It was awesome. And yeah, so in theory, I would have you all fill these out, and then I would collect the note cards at the end and then gather up these specific concerns. Because I had a logic professor do this, and it was really helpful because it showed that everybody had the same concerns and it kind of humanized it. So I might do that this time. I'm still kind of deciding. But yeah, so that's it for this little icebreaker. That wasn't really an icebreaker. And yes, someone is mowing the lawn outside my apartment complex. Yay! So yeah, I'm gonna cut this here. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.